Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to the Avexia webinar series. Our topic for tonight's special webinar is Adrenal Answers and Thyroid Thoughts. My name is Joanne Iverson. I'm the Director of Client Relations for Avexia Diagnostics and will be your host for this evening. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of being joined by an exciting guest, actually 2 times, Dr. Jean Lawrence, who will be our presenter for this webinar. Dr. Lawrence is a nationally recognized speaker on the subject of whole food nutrition and is a certified clinical nutritionist, master herbalist, certified functional medicine practitioner, doctor of naturopathy, doctor of naturopathic medicine, also has a PhD in natural medicine and a diplomate of the American Clinical Board of Nutrition. She has several years of experience with whole food nutrition, herbal nutrition, functional blood work, hormone testing, and hair analysis. She specializes in endocrine disorders and digestive issues. She co-manages patients with several practitioners and offers telehealth visits as well as for her out-of-state patients. Her functional medicine practice is in Toccoa, Georgia, with her husband, Philip, a chiropractor. Her passion is teaching and training to other practitioners, and she brings education, information, and entertainment together in a unique style. Dr. Lawrence has been the executive director of the American Clinical Board of Nutrition and is a member of the advisory board of Functional Medicine University. Wow. Joining Dr. Lawrence tonight will be Dr. Wayne Sedano, our Director of Clinical Support and Education at Avexia Diagnostics. Additionally, Dr. Sedano is the Director of Integrative Medicine Education for the College of Integrative Medicine and lectures and teaches internationally. Before we begin, just a bit of housekeeping. We encourage participation. So if you have a question, you may submit your questions in the questions field on the right-hand side of the interface. Also in the interface, you should be able to see in the handout section the slide presentation. We will answer submitted questions towards the end of this presentation. If your questions are not answered this evening, you will surely receive an answer by email within a day or two, along with the slides and the recording. Without further delay, I will now turn the webinar over to Dr. Lawrence.
Well, good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you're listening from. I hope you guys have had a nice Memorial Day and maybe had a vacation or one planned at least, which we know is going to raise your dopamine levels just by booking something. And it's like, oh boy, I get to go away sometime. So I hope you guys are all doing that because we have to take care of ourselves, or who's going to take care of our patients. So I love this subject because every patient I've ever seen, it seems like, comes into my office or we're on the phone and I'll say, well, what can I help you with? And they say, I think it's my thyroid, or I know it's my adrenals. Well, they're so closely connected. I wanted to really bring this home because especially after the pandemic, we know that everybody was having stress of some sort, whether it was shifting to working from home, losing a loved one, job loss because of legal issues. I mean, there are just so many things happen to people that I've just never seen this many adrenal conditions going on since then as I have now. So we know that also autoimmune disease is coming out of this whole thing. But let's just talk about the adrenals tonight and how this is affecting your thyroid patients. So if you have Hashi patients or people with hyperthyroidism or whatever's going on, the adrenals are absolutely affecting that. So let's get started. Okay. So we know the FDA is not evaluating this. And of course, we have to put this in here just to be cool. Okay. So some of this is going to be review, but some of this we haven't looked at maybe in a long time. And, you know, we all go to a seminar, a live event, and we sit there, and studies have shown that within 2 days of listening to a live event that's 6 or 8 hours long, 80% of it is gone within the first 2 days that you hear. And so it's hard to think that, wow, all this work goes into a presentation and you're not going to remember most of it. But this is why you have the slides, right? And then you can also, I'm sure, access the recording through Avexia, which is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And you can listen to it again if you need to. So we know that your patients are going to have some issues. And we know, for example, that an endocrinologist, bless their heart, they're just normally checking TSH, and they're normally using Synthroid or levothyroxine, sometimes Armour, but they're not looking at the whole picture. I don't know why that is, but that's what we're dealing with. And that's why people come to see us. They want some answers. And so I want you to think about this a little differently. I like to bring information that is either has been presented, but a different viewpoint of it, or just something totally different, like I did last time on the overmethylation event. Okay, so we know that what the adrenals are doing, they have to help us cope. And so I'm going to tell you also about a really cool case that I had with a Dutch test and what we found out about that. So we know that the adrenals are handling stress, but it doesn't just mean mental stress. So if you're injured, the adrenals are called into action. If you pick up an infection of some sort, the adrenals are called into action. And we never think about that when we're sick, do we? We think about using antibacterials, antivirals, antifungals, all these other things, but we forget that the adrenals are saying, hey, I'm involved in this too. So also work and relationship problems. Well, do we know anybody who doesn't have either or both work and a relationship problem of some sort? 90% of my patients tell me their stress comes from their children. You can take that as you will. Okay, so, but your ability to bounce back really, really depends on your adrenal glands. Now, I know this firsthand because I was just realizing, I thought, why am I more tired when I see people in person in my office than if I do phone calls? And the reason was, it was the energy that was expended from me to my patients. And we know that patients can be draining sometimes, some more than others. That's just life. But also knowing that it was a frequency issue, right? So I'm sure a lot of you do energy work in your practice and you know all about frequencies, but people, certain people that are sick or people that are depressed, whatever, they are going to have different frequencies. And sometimes that can be really, really draining on us. And so I realized I needed to really take a look at what I was doing and how I was doing it and adjust my schedule for a little while till I get over something. And it really, really does make a difference. And you know, some people want to go somewhere, do something. I've just found that just actually resting, clearing your mind of everything to do with work is a really, really big help. Really big help. Deep breathing, taking a nap, making sure you're getting enough nutrients. I mean, all these things, because we have to keep going because there's just sicker and sicker people all the time. Now, we know that your adrenal glands aren't very big. And this is what we tell our patients, you know, this is what they're sitting on top of the kidneys. Well, the word adrenal, ad means next to, renal, kidney, next to the kidneys. And that's why they're called the adrenals. So, but this is what's amazing to me, is that they affect the functioning of every tissue, organ, and gland in the body. Every single one. And this is why Addison's, when your adrenals just stop working, is such a major, major thing. And actually, Addison's can be fatal. So this is why we want to know if a patient has Addison's and start to help them, right? But this is what's interesting to me. The forces that these glands mobilize largely determine the energy of your responses to every change in your internal or external environment. So back when we, in the winter time, we had that Arctic blast that came through, and it really, really affected a lot of people. People were stranded for 30 hours on the highway. Can you even imagine? You're snowed in, you can't get out to use the bathroom, you don't have any food in your car, and freezing temperatures. That to me would have been one of the most stressful events to go through. So if we're trapped in a situation where like that, we can't change it, right? Just like if you're on an airplane and you're claustrophobic, what are you going to do? You can't get off the airplane. It's 35,000 feet in the air. And so this is why we have to be able to say, I'm not in control of this. And what can I do about it? Well, if I can't change it, I'm going to have to adapt to it, knowing that most situations don't last forever, right? They don't last very long. It might be a situation that lasts for an hour. It might be you going to the dentist for dental surgery. Who wants that? The two worst words in the English language are oral surgery. And it's like, no, I don't want to go through that. So this is why people don't like to go to the dentist. They get scared, they get upset and stressed out. And this is why they have medications and things to help people with that. So we don't want to have to rely on pharmaceuticals unless it's absolutely necessary. There's ways to help the adrenals to function and to help us through these stressful times that we can't predict and we can't get away from, so that we can do better. Because some people have a panic attack just for, it seems to us like maybe no reason, but it is a reason, and it's usually because they don't have enough minerals or there's some other stress going on. Okay. All right. So when I looked at this picture, I thought this is like looking in a mirror because obviously you're facing your computer and your right adrenal gland would be on your right side. So this is why there's such a big deal. But I like to show that to patients too, so that they can see where everything is. All right. But everything that's happening, whether you have a blood pressure spike, whether you have a panic attack, what's your breathing doing, and your allergic responses, huge, right? So when you think allergies, you think liver, but if you think asthma and breathing issues, you're thinking adrenals. Instead of, well, let me just support the lungs. Well, wait a minute now. The adrenals are affecting norepinephrine and epinephrine, which are dilating the bronchial tree. And so I have seen amazing results come out of that the person is actually in respiratory acidosis and the adrenals are shot. There's no epinephrine. How are they supposed to breathe? And especially after people have worn masks for a long time, you're going to see more of that. Okay. So, but this is interesting too. It's affecting your metabolism. And we always think of the thyroid with metabolism. We don't stop and think of the adrenals affecting our metabolism, but especially the distribution of stored fat. Well, this is why a lot of people say, I'm bloating. I look 9 months pregnant. In the morning, I look normal, but they're having this little belly fat. And it doesn't matter how much yoga they do or cardio or weight or whatever, weight training, they can't lose it. And they're saying, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? I said, you are in survival mode. And the brain doesn't know if you're in a war or famine or a terrible situation. And so it's red alert and everything else stops except for your survival. And so when it puts some extra fat around the waist, it's because if you're not going to eat for a long time, the body goes, hey, you can live off of that, right? So it's always trying to maintain homeostasis, and it will do weird things in order to do that. But we have to trust the innate intelligence that's in the body, don't we? We have to say, okay, this is happening for some reason. What is my body trying to tell me? So when it is happening, we have to just go with it. We don't want to keep fighting it and fighting it and fighting it. Especially this can happen with people who do intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting, we know, is great for some people. It's horrible for other people, okay? But the blood sugar regulation is also huge. So I always tell people that mood and energy follow blood sugar. If your mood starts to get stinky and your energy goes down, you need to eat something. And the adrenals are really, really affecting this. So that's why it's so important to help the adrenals. And actually the best thing you can do for your adrenals is to normalize your blood sugar. Now, how many pre-diabetics do we have in this country? 50 million plus. How many diabetics do we have worldwide? Over 330 million now, okay? So if they would get their blood sugar fixed, they would help the adrenals out a lot. But also proper cardiovascular. Well, we know if your heart's just beating like a rabbit, that's not a good thing. And your GI function, why are your patients bloating? Let's talk about this a minute. Why is a patient bloating if they're stressed? Because they're in sympathetic dominance. Okay, so the parasympathetics are nowhere to be found, and so they can't digest their food. So now it sits there and ferments and putrefies and creates all this gas. That's what fermentation does. And then they're bloated. And about the third or fourth visit in your office, they will admit that they're having a stress. And we all know that, don't we? They don't tell you on the first visit. They have to trust you first. They have to know you're going to listen and take care of them. And then they start unraveling the ball of yarn, and they start saying, well, I have to raise a grandkid, and well, I have to take care of my parents, and well, I have to do something else. And it's really affecting their GI function, okay? But this is amazing too. Anti-inflammatory and antioxidant hormones secreted by the adrenals, okay, help to minimize negative and allergic reactions. How many of your patients are having allergies? A lot of them, okay? But then I also tell patients, and we talked about the hormones in the last webinar, and once a woman hits menopause or a man hits andropause, the adrenal glands have to take over. So what if you have a female patient in her 30s and her adrenals are already shot? Is she going to have a happy menopause? No, no, no. Is she going to be headed to osteoporosis? Yes. And here's also what's very interesting about the adrenals. We know that high levels of cortisol actually destroy bone. We know this. Cushing knew this back in 1932. But also, if you have low adrenal output, low cortisol, and it's menopause or andropause, then the woman especially is not going to make enough estrogen and not enough progesterone, and now she's also going to have osteoporosis. So she can't win. She's either, if she has too high or too low, her bones are being affected. And also hot flashes and all those fun things start coming along, okay? But this is why the adrenals have to be healthy. If you knew 5 people that had healthy adrenals, I challenge you to name them, because most people don't. And they never want to admit that it's their adrenals, just like they don't want to admit when they have a brain issue, right? So this is from, as we know, Hans Selye, who was the father of adrenal fatigue. And this is what he taught us, right? So the first stage, we have adrenal fatigue. It's just daily stuff. You're getting the phone calls, your kid's been in a car accident, your kid fell down the stairs, your boss had something happen. It's just normal stuff. Cortisol's up and down all the time. That's everyday stuff. And then the second stage, the cortisol is ongoing. Now, this is when we're in a situation that isn't going to change. Now, it could be caring for a special needs child. It could be raising grandchildren, taking care of parents. It could be having to move for your job and you didn't want to, having to change locations. Maybe somebody lost their house. Maybe they have to find something to rent and house prices are terrible. So that's high cortisol. So the high cortisol, we know that people can't calm down. They can't relax. They have to take something to settle down. They can't just sit and watch a movie or just sit outside. They have to be doing something up and moving around, and they can't sleep, okay? So this is also something to remember. If a patient cannot fall asleep, it's high cortisol. If they can't stay asleep, it's blood sugar. And the adrenals are involved in both of those. This is why when people take CBD oil or something at night, or melatonin we know is opposite of cortisol. And so it's going to help people to sleep. But sometimes, especially on the Dutch test, you're going to see that the person has a high waking sample of melatonin. Now, when you wake up, your melatonin should be at its lowest. If they have a high waking sample of melatonin, that can explain why their total cortisol production is very low, right? But these are the people that can't wake up in the morning. They're hitting the snooze like 50 times. Boom, boom, boom. They're done. They're thinking, do I have to get up? Do I have to get up? They can't hardly do it because the pineal gland that secretes melatonin is telling the body to rest, to calm down. And when I see high waking melatonin, I ask the patient, are you taking melatonin? Which would be the normal reason for this. And they'll say, no, I'm not. Okay, well, you must be having a lot of stress, because otherwise, why would the pineal gland overmake melatonin? Why would it do that? Because it's trying to get the body to repair. And you know, rest is a foreign language to people. They think if they're not doing something every minute, what does that mean? You know, I tell people that we're human beings, we're not human doings. Sometimes you just have to sit. I saw the Grand Tetons last week. I didn't want to rush through that. I don't know when I'll ever see it again. I just wanted to stand there and just soak that in, that gorgeous, phenomenal beauty of those mountains. And we just rush from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And sometimes we need to learn to say no. I love the word no. Oh, it's so much fun too to say it and just watch people's reactions. Just try it sometimes. Okay. So this is high cortisol. This goes along with usually high blood pressure and digestive issues and not sleeping and everything, right? It's just not a good state to be in. And then the third stage is flatline cortisol. Nothing there. Now, I had a patient, this is what I want to tell you about this test, okay? So I had a patient, I had done the Dutch test on her. Her cortisol was basically nothing. Her DHEA was basically nothing. She was 40, she's 42, she still is trying to conceive. And hey, you know, it's possible. So that's the reason that she came to see me. So did the Dutch test, saw these numbers, and I said, and her husband was actually running her labs, and then they would send them to me, and I would talk with them about them. And I said, I need him to run an ACTH test, which we know is adrenocorticotropic hormone, which comes out of the pituitary gland. Also, when this came back, I said, run a TSH, because that also we know comes out of the pituitary. I want to see what that's doing. So here's what came back. Okay, but she was having just this horrible fatigue. And once she did the test, I put her on some herbal licorice, okay, before I got the test results back based on her symptoms. And she said it was helping her to feel better. So the ACTH test, the number should be less than like 63. Hers was 1,330. Okay. Now, if you had a patient, let's talk about this for a second. What if you had a patient that you're doing saliva testing on? Okay. And it comes back, the cortisol is flatline. What are you going to do? You're going to put them on an adrenal glandular product. You're going to put them on herbal licorice. You're going to put them on a pantothenic acid. You're going to put them on minerals. You're going to put them on vitamin C. I mean, you're going to do all this stuff. But maybe you need to see if it's a pituitary issue, right? Because if you have really high ACTH, this can mean a possible pituitary tumor, or it can mean an adrenal tumor, or both. So when she had this done, her TSH also, which should be like 1.8 to 3 is optimal. Hers was 30. So the adrenals are saying, you know, we can't get the message, and the thyroid is saying we can't get the message. And it's all because of the pituitary saying, I'm doing my part. I am doing my part. I don't know what you guys are doing downstream, but you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And so I told her to go to an endocrinologist, get some scans done, because I don't do that kind of stuff. And turns out that she has a tumor on her adrenal glands. So, but do you see the difference is when you just say, oh, your adrenals are shot, let's just put you on something. And also and one of the symptoms of Addison's is infertility. I asked her about skin pigmentation issues. She was having that too. She had all the classic symptoms. And I said, that's why she was feeling better on the licorice. But we know what their treatment is, right? It's steroids, because the adrenals aren't doing anything. So can you imagine what kind of stress she's been under from something? This is why it's very, very important to sometimes take another step and run an ACTH, and it's a blood marker, and it's easy to do. So when these people are flatline, the blood pressure tends to be low. I don't like under 110/70. It's poor perfusion. There's not enough blood flow to the brain. These people can't think. So there's something interesting about stage 2 and stage 3. Both of these can cause brain fog. So if the cortisol's high, the brain is in red alert, and it doesn't really care about what somebody's phone number or what address are we going to. It won't remember details like that. But when it's flatline, don't ask them anything. And these are people too that cry very easily in third stage. Okay, they can do that too in second stage, but more so in third stage. It's a hair's breadth before it's the tipping point. They're on the edge of the cliff. They're hanging probably by their feet, and they're fixing to go over the, you know, that's what we say in the South. Everybody's fixing to do something. I don't know where that came from. So anyway, when they have low cortisol, it's low blood pressure. And I ask them that, do you tend to have low blood pressure? I always ask my fatigue patients that, because you don't want to put someone on licorice that has high blood pressure. And when I say licorice to patients, you know what they're thinking? Twizzlers. Yeah, go for it. Okay, obviously not. Now, here's the signs and symptoms. This stuff is just all in your notes, and you know what you can do? You can print some of these slides out and laminate them, or put them up in your office, and your patients will sit in the waiting room and go, gosh, that's me. I have that. Do you help that? Yeah, we do. Isn't it amazing that patients don't always know all the stuff that we do? We do tons of stuff. But especially the fatigue is the #1 sign. Headaches when people are stressed. The immune system is shot. The allergies are worse. They don't want to get up. They've got the stomach issues. They got a headache in the afternoon. I see a lot of fatigue in the afternoon mostly. Morning cortisol is fine. Lunch is okay. But afternoon, they just want to go home at 4 p.m. and put on their pajamas and binge Netflix, which once in a while probably wouldn't be a bad idea. We don't have enough fun doing stuff like that. But there's the bloating, they're craving the sweet. This is America, right? Sweets, caffeine, and cigarettes. That's the American way. Blurred vision. Of course, we know that can be a sign of low blood sugar. Unstable behavior, that's at an all-time high. There's the low blood sugar again. Dizziness when they stand up too quickly. Now, we all know about Ragland's test, right? So if you have a chance to do that in your office, do it. And so the patient is supine, and you take their blood pressure and write it down, and you immediately have them stand up and take it again. One person actually told me this week, okay, this is hard to believe it. This is what they told me. They did Ragland's test on the patient, and when they stood up, they could not hear anything through the stethoscope. What does that mean? That's kind of scary. Okay, it's like, oh my gosh. There's the asthma, rage, just when you just lose like your keys or something, you're like, oh, really? I need to have my keys, I need to go. It just, and it makes you more stressed out. And of course, the thyroid dysfunction and weight gain. Now, do I just want to put people on adrenal support? No, I just don't do that unless I do testing, because sometimes those symptoms of high cortisol and low cortisol sometimes overlap. You don't want to put somebody on the wrong thing, and they get worse because they're circling the drain. Okay, but look at this, no libido. Now, why would they have no libido? Well, first of all, if you're not sleeping, you just want to go to sleep. You don't care about anything else. But why would someone have no libido? Because the brain doesn't really care if you have relations with your partner. It just wants you to survive one more day. So that goes on the back burner, and that's what everybody wants to have fixed, don't they? Well, just get my libido up. I'm like, you're too tired to do anything. What? That's not going to work. Perfectionism. Will people please stop being perfectionists? It's never going to work. Okay, everything's going to have a problem or a mistake, and it's okay. It's okay to not be perfect. Overwork. Please cut back on your hours if you can. Family problems, money problems, those kind of go together. All these things happening at work, not fulfilling their life's purpose. This was actually on my intake forms that I had before I changed them. 90% of my patients checked that off, not fulfilling their life's purpose. That is sad. Sad. Depression, single parenting. I don't see how 2 parents do it, let alone 1. Neighbors that are crazy. Unstable income, selling cars or insurance or real estate. Having a disability, going through problems as a child. Okay, but look at all these other things that are affecting, the adrenals are affecting. Can't get over an infection. Can't get over an infection. And what are they thinking? Oh my gosh, maybe I have cancer, because we know cancer is the sore that never heals, right? So they're thinking, maybe I have cancer, more stress, poor sleep. They have their diabetes is out of control. Their liver doesn't detox, because that's what happens when the adrenals are not working, the thyroid doesn't work, and the liver doesn't detox. Okay, So this is what I love to say. Functional medicine is thinking and linking. Well, first we have to think. Okay. It's not illegal yet. We can start thinking, critical thinking. That's what I always want my information to be, is critical thinking. We need more of this. Please do that and take time to think. You notice how many things come to you when you're just doing something kind of benign, like loading the dishwasher or taking a shower, and you'll think, oh my gosh, that's that. That's because we have to allow our minds time to rest, or creativity goes away, goes completely away. So you need to be taking a thorough health history. You need absolutely to know what medications that your patients are taking. When did their symptoms start? Do they have any labs? And I like to know what my patient does for a living. I want to know, one guy said, well, I'm retired. Okay, well, what did you used to do? I always want to know that. I want to know if they have a dog. I'm a dog person. I want to know how many kids they have. What are their kids doing? Because they're not getting that kind of stuff anywhere else. They need it from us. Okay. And then I have 2 whiteboards. One just stays up with methylation on it. It's been there so long, I can't even erase it anymore. Okay. And just rub my hand over it, nothing happens. But I leave the other whiteboard for the person in my office. This is a huge deal. Do it, do it, do it. Okay. So here's Sally, and she's sitting in your office. You're saying, I'm going to draw this out for you. And this is what happens when you take your PPI. And now you're not breaking down your proteins. And now you have too much ammonia production, which leads to leaky gut, which leads to your inflammation, which raises your cortisol, which shuts down your digestion. Bam! And they don't have to understand it or remember it, but they need to know that you know. That's why I love whiteboards. I don't ever do a live event without a whiteboard, a huge one. And it's wonderful. So sometimes people are just stressed, but sometimes they're not. Medications, infections like H. pylori, which is all over the place and one of the #1 reasons for thyroid autoimmune disease, or an injury. Food sensitivities, I hope you're testing for those. Toxins, some of your patients have all of this stuff at once, okay? But patients, I have to look up medications. I'm not a pharmacist. I don't want to be a pharmacist. I like what I'm doing, but I have to read them. And my 2 favorite side effects of medications of all times. Ready? Okay, #1 is the best one. So #2, I'm going to be like David Letterman and start. #2, uncontrolled worm-like movements of the tongue. Okay, what if I want controlled worm-like movements of the tongue? What do I take for that? And my #1 favorite side effect of all time, pain in the hairy areas. What is that? Everybody's got hair at different spots. Listen, you have to be laughing and having fun with your patients. Now, I'm not talking about if they come in with a horrible diagnosis to, have some chuckles, but I'm talking about most of your patients, it relaxes people to laugh. They learn better. They are more aware of what you're telling them. They're just, some patients come in, 95% of their issues are coming from their drug side effects. I want to know about a history of strep, especially mono, and especially with Epstein-Barr, right? Which is obviously mono. And a lot of people say, what is mono? They don't even know what it is. Some woman came in that had literally had 1,000 rounds of antibiotics and wondered why her child was born with eczema. Gee, what a shock there. I want to know about accidents. Did they fall out of a tree? Did they wreck their bike? What happened? Okay. So this is why people, when they get on steroids, it's because their own adrenals can't make any cortisol anymore. So this is a sign to you that if a patient comes in and says, I got a steroid shot in my knee, I got a cortisone shot in my shoulder, why did they need that? If the adrenals were functioning, they wouldn't need that. Okay. So this can be the sign that if a person requires steroids, the adrenals are toast. But make sure, always do your testing. But then these cortisone shots are wrecking their calcium. And then over time, the knee is not going to get better, it's just going to get worse. But if you have someone who's been in a bad accident or something, just whatever your specialty is, just help them as much as possible. So anything that drives inflammation is going to drive cortisol. Well, what if the adrenals are toast? What if they're flatlined? how are they going to respond to any inflammation that the patient has? So here's a patient, low cortisol, they got nothing to give, and now they get injured. Are they going to get over that easily? No, there's nothing to help them. And that's why they start eating Advil and NSAIDs like candy, which perpetuates the leaky gut, more inflammation, more NSAIDs, and it's just this horrible vicious cycle, okay? So when you have this inflammation going on, the person can't battle it. And they say everything hurts all the time. Everything hurts. It's because the adrenals cannot come up to the task. Most people are having food issues. They don't want to admit it because they don't want to get off the cheese. They don't want to get off the gluten. And we think those are the only two things that they should get off of. No, I usually see egg whites come back on food sensitivity testing. I had an 11-year-old patient with IBS. Now, most IBS is driven from stress. What would she have to stress about at 11 years old? Did a food test, came back egg whites, got them out of her system, IBS gone. This is a major, major deal because food sensitivities can cause leaky gut. And we don't want that, okay? So we just always say to everybody, quit eating gluten and dairy. Yeah, but I've seen kale come back, almonds come back, beans come back, all kinds of things. And it really, really makes a difference. And this test also comes in a finger stick if you want it in that version, and it helps children. And they also test for candida at the same time, which is awesome, okay? So when I'm running labs on patients, I tell them it's an investment in their health. I mean, most of them have 2 or 3 cars, they have a boat, maybe an RV, and they got a 4-wheeler, and how much did those cost? And if you're not around to enjoy them, somebody else is going to get them, okay? So if you have patients that are having problems, you're having problems telling them to run tests, they don't want to do them. What I tell them too is that they're, remember, 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and I need all the pieces. And then they understand it. They should expect to have testing done. Now, here's some questions that you're going to ask the patient. What kind of toxins are they exposed to? Now, if you have a patient who is a hairstylist, you're going to know they're exposed to major amounts of toxins, right? Unless they're doing organic hair care, which 90% of them aren't. What about bug sprays? This is huge, 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 huge. What kind of personal products are they using? Now, there's an app. Let me get a drink of water. There's an app called Yuka, Y-U-K-A. Yuka, however you say it. And it has a little camera on it, and you can scan the barcodes of personal care products and also foods. And it will tell you, it will, put them on a scale, good, fair, poor, bad kind of thing, and it will offer an alternative to that. It's so fun to use it. It's so fun. But you should tell your patients to do this and scan the barcodes of their hairspray. Can there ever be a natural hairspray? I don't know. Their toothpaste, all kinds of stuff. Because a lot of people are getting so many toxins just from the junk they're using in their own house. What's their water source? Now, this is big, we know, for the thyroid. And all of your patients are going to answer you the same way. Ready? Well, maybe not all. I drink out of a Berkey. Well, okay, good for you. What are you showering in? You're showering in chlorinated water, or you have a chlorine pool. That's really shutting down the thyroid function because we know that it stops the uptake of iodine into the thyroid. So I don't care what they're drinking as much as what are they showering in? Hot water, the pores are open in the skin, boom, here comes the chlorine. They're using bleach and they're swimming in a pool and they wonder how this happened. Why did my thyroid stop working? And especially if your patients say, I have dry skin, dry hair, flaky scalp, all this kind of stuff, it's the chlorine. Get a filter that fits over the shower head. You can get them at Home Depot or Lowe's or any of those places. Remove the chlorine, or better yet, get a whole house system. Gosh, that's such a wonderful investment in your health, isn't it? How many amalgams do they have? They don't know what amalgams are. Most of your patients aren't going to know that. So do you have any fillings? And they'll say, yes. You say, how many? They say, I don't know. It's hilarious. How can you not know what's in your own mouth, right? I recommend a wonderful book that's called Reversing Chronic Disease by Tom Warren, all about mercury, and it's written to the layperson. So your patients will, it's not so scientific, they don't get it, and it's wonderful, okay? Really, really spells it out for them so that they can make an informed decision. I don't tell patients to just go do it. I want them to understand it. Do they live in a house that's had water damage, especially a concrete block basement? Most patients do not even know what their basement is made out of. Is it concrete block or poured? They don't know. So you have to explain the difference. If you can look from the outside, you see individual blocks. Obviously, it's water, you know, it's a block, concrete block basement, okay? Do they have a front loading washer? Oh my gosh, okay? They need to recall all of those things because that water sits in that rubber gasket and creates tons of mold. So this is a toxin and an infection at the same time. Do they have personal stress? Now, we don't want somebody who's going to take up 2 hours of your time telling you every single little bitty thing, but sometimes just patients need to talk. And I had a patient that spent the whole first visit, she just needed to talk. I didn't even take any notes. I just let her talk, and she said, I feel so much better. That's what she needed. She didn't need anything else from me. She just needed me to listen to her, okay? So always be aware and be sensitive to what a patient needs. You ever have somebody say, I bought you some flowers, but you'd rather have a back rub? They're not paying attention to what you need. So if somebody says, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Pay attention to the answers. If they say, I need to talk, then let them do it, okay? They don't need supplements. They need a hug, and they need you to listen. Listen, 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 okay? Because if they start to cry, I start to cry. I can't help that. And I have tissues in my office. You need to have that too. People need love more now than I think ever before. Please love on your patients. Please, please, please love on your patients. And not to get something from them, just to love them. And I always think to myself, what if I was the patient? What if I'm sitting in this chair across from my desk? What do I want from a doctor? What do I want? I want them to hear me, right? Women need to be heard, okay? I am woman, hear me roar, right? We all need to be heard. But we also need to be cared for and treated tenderly when we're hurting. And your patients are that way. You know, they just want you to love them. Please love them. They're searching. That's why people get on drugs and do stuff they shouldn't do. And they just need to know somebody loves them. You know how much that speaks volumes about who you are as a doctor. Not, oh, my doctor put me on XYZ and I'm so much better. Well, that's great, but do they know who you are as a person? That makes a big, big difference. I always want to know if they've been out of the country. I never think of Canada as being out of the country. I don't know, I just think of it like an extension of the United States, but you know, that can be, I guess, considered foreign travel. Everybody comes back from India or Costa Rica or whatever with a parasite. Just it's a given, okay? And that they keep getting the flu, they keep getting pneumonia. These are signs that the adrenals are just not working, okay? But chronic or severe infection. Now we know that if someone has Epstein-Barr, for example, it's never really going to go away. It's going to get dormant like a tree in the wintertime. It's just going to look like it's dead, but it's not, because there comes those buds in the springtime. Okay. So when somebody has a history, or like if they have herpes and they'll say, I get cold sores, and I'll say, are you stressed? Yes. Every time I'm stressed, I get a cold sore. Well, what does that tell you? Stress is going to reactivate dormant viruses. Okay, this is why millions of people have had chickenpox, but not the same millions of people get shingles. They don't all do that. Shingles usually happens after an event, surgery, losing a loved one, a car accident, something. Okay, boom, out pop the shingles. Okay, So the longer that the infection goes on, the more severe it is, and the more someone just keeps getting it over and over, you have got to address adrenals, okay? It's such a huge, huge thing, but look at that. Adrenal fatigue can occur after just one single episode. Oh, yeah, I think we've all seen that. Okay, here's the adrenal pattern, free cortisol patterns, okay? There's an option for you. So, like I was saying, the mood and the energy follow the blood sugar. So the adrenals are taxed every time the blood sugar gets too low. This is the way I explain this to patients. Your adrenals are a construction crew and they're building a set of condos, okay? But you let your blood sugar get too low. So the brain says, hey, I need some glucose. So now we're going to pull the adrenals off that job. And now we're going to bring them over here to build a shopping mall. And the adrenals are like, man, I'm down to 3 people. I cannot do all this work. I can't. I have a 100-person job and I got 3 people that showed up for work. I can't do it. And we don't want to go through and have this reactive hypoglycemia, right? What should happen is I'm hungry, I eat, nothing changes. If I'm hungry, I eat and I feel better, I have reactive hypoglycemia. This is what disrupts that negative feedback to the pituitary. And now the TSH is going to go too high or too low. Don't want that. So some people don't lose weight when they fast because it's too stressful to the body. It's just too stressful. And remember too that high cortisol is increasing insulin. Always remember that. Okay. So I love running a fasting insulin on labs. Nobody does it. You guys need to be doing it. It needs to be in the functional Avexia panel. There's my shout out. I want that to be in that panel because as far as I know, it's not in there and I want it to be in there. Because you can have like this normal glucose and A1C and insulin is terrible, terrible, terrible. We don't want it more than 10. So you're catching pre-diabetes way ahead of everybody else. How cool is that? That's the #1 reason for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Liver enzymes being elevated. Look at all these other things. And increased risk of Alzheimer's. That's why they call it diabetes type 3. Okay? So sometimes your patients have to eat more often to tell the brain that everything is okay. Everything is okay. You know, when you go through a crisis or you have a friend who goes through a crisis or a family member, sometimes they don't need you to say a whole lot of things to them. They just need you to be there for them. But one of the best things you can do is when you hug them and to say, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And what to hear that is very soothing to the brain, and the brain gets the message like, okay, oh, okay, I'm not on DEFCON. I always forget whether DEFCON 5 is the worst one or DEFCON 1 is the first one, the worst one. But anyway, your DEFCON just slows way down. It's like, okay, breathe. Are you teaching your patients how to breathe? Teach them how to just slow the breathing down. And the brain goes, okay, okay. And eat something. You know, when you have a baby, this is what the baby is happiest with. The baby wants to be loved and cuddled and rocked. And who doesn't, right? But the baby also wants food in their tummy and dry pants. So I love to say this to my patients. I'll say, okay, this is what your prescription is basically, is your tummy's going to be full and make sure your pants are dry before you go to bed. And they love that, okay? And make sure that they're cuddling. Listen, I read that some survey was done and 31% of people in Britain still sleep with a teddy bear. These are adults. What's wrong with that? I mean, it promotes oxytocin and it just makes you feel good. It's just a good thing. Like petting your dog does the same thing. It's just wonderful, okay? So when the patient is struggling, give them some ideas for just walking for pleasure, not for exercise. Stop overtraining, rest, look up at the sky, listen to the birds. What's going on in your own yard? Maybe you don't even know. Go out there and sit. I love to sit on the grass in my front yard and watch the sun go down through the trees. Oh, that does wonders for people. You need to give them some ideas. Also, saying positive things out loud. I am a wonderful person. I help a lot of people. I have a great job. I have a wonderful family. Just saying things, the body, they've shown so many research articles that have shown that this really, really helps people to heal from adrenal issues. Okay? They may feel funny doing it at first, but pretty soon it's going to become a habit. I am a strong person. I am resilient. Okay, and of course our favorite, every day in every way I'm getting better and better. It makes me think of the Pink Panther. Okay, so make sure your patients are eating enough that they feel good, they feel okay. Now, low adrenal function, usually years and years of stress, not 2 weeks of stress, okay? This is years and years of stress. And then some people are drinking energy drinks like crazy. My husband had a 60-year-old female patient who was literally drinking 20 Red Bulls a day, 20, and it killed her, shut her kidneys down. So these things are selling like crazy because people are walking around dragging through everything, okay? So this is why people also with low adrenals, why do they have more arthritic pain? Because they don't have enough cortisol to dampen their own inflammation. And they can't get over cold, flu, whatever they've got, a summer cold, whatever, which are miserable. They can't get over the hump. So there's the 4-point cortisol test that will tell you, but I'm just in love with the Dutch test. So you guys do whatever you want to do. But like we were showing in that slide, you can just do an adrenal test that will tell you that from Dutch, and we'll tell you that. So are you doing the pupillary reflex test? And don't just walk up to your patient with a bright flashlight and just stick it in their eyeball. You know, tell them to find a point on the wall and look at it, and come from the side, gradually, 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 and then shine it for a few seconds and watch what the pupil is doing. It should constrict, shouldn't it? But then it will get wide and constrict and get wide and constrict. And when I was in my 20s, I could actually control how my pupils dilated. Isn't that something you'd only do in your 20s? I don't know, it just seems weird, but you know, it's kind of fun. Okay, so when you do these tests, and of course the Raglans, you can do that if the patient doesn't want to do testing, but don't start them out on a huge dose of something. Give them, and some of your patients, listen, they are so overwhelmed. They are so overwhelmed. There's just one more straw to get on that camel's back. Please do not put them on 40 supplements. Please do not do that. Start them with one supplement. Whatever kind of adrenal support, if you have like adaptogens, which are awesome, right? Rhodiola, ginseng, ashwagandha, schisandra, all these kinds of things. Just put them on one thing, because that's all they can handle. If you put them on 40 things, you're going to throw them out. You'll never see them again. So this is what's going to help all these other things. But sometimes people are so flatlined that everybody else thinks they're lazy. They're not lazy. I've talked to people that it took them an hour to get dressed. An hour, because they're so tired. Now, here is a product that is just what we're talking about, okay? Combination of adaptogenic and adrenal tonic herbs. Loving Eleuthero, okay? We don't take enough of that stuff. It's awesome. So for just fatigue all throughout the day, Eleuthero is it. Ginseng is just going to help you to bounce back. It's awesome. Look at ashwagandha, rhodiola, licorice. Look at that. Is this not awesome? But here's the best part. Look what it says. And aid in the production and replenishment of depleted catecholamines. Now, how do you know a patient has low catecholamines? Because without caffeine, they can't function. Okay? And then they're not making epinephrine and norepinephrine, and they're having breathing issues. There you go. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And it does not have adrenal glandular in it. I don't use a lot of adrenal glandular products. I do that when it's pretty severe, I will step in and do it. But sometimes I don't need it. The body just says, help me to function. So that looks beautiful. And here's Adrenal Complete. Now this one would have the glandular in it. It's got the tyrosine. Well, why do we need tyrosine? Tyrosine becomes dopamine, which becomes epinephrine and norepinephrine. Okay, That's why you need it. Vitamin C, the adrenals use more vitamin C than anything in the body. It's got to have those B vitamins. And there's your catecholamines again. You know, when you have low dopamine, remember, you don't like anybody. Nobody wants to be around you. You're grumpy, okay? Let's get better dopamine. That's why you're going to book a vacation as soon as this webinar is over. Okay. Now, we know that people with adrenal fatigue, they get paranoid for no reason. Like, I think that person's looking at me. I think that person's watching me or following me. They can be confused. They can't remember what somebody told them 5 minutes ago. And so they can't, they're on a knife's edge. They just can't do it. They've just got one more little thing. They can't do it. And then they're exhausted. They fall into bed. They can't go to sleep. So here's all these things that can be happening that cause it. Frequent would probably be constant crises at work. Now, some things at work you can actually change, and some things you can't. But see if there's things you can change. Is patient flow a problem in your office? Is getting people out the door a problem in your office? Do you need a bigger space? Do you need a better space? Do you need less staff? Do you need less staff drama? You know, good luck with that, right? What do you need? Write these things down. So any severe emotional trauma that people have been through in the past 2 or 3 years, everybody seems to have been touched by some emotional trauma. They can't get over major surgery. They went in. My fear is I'm going to go in for some kind of an operation that I never want to have, and I come out with a colostomy bag. No, 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 don't want that, okay? Serious burns, including severe sunburn. Now, why would this matter? Because this is kind of fun. If you have a tendency to severe sunburn, it means you have a problem with essential fatty acids. And essential fatty acids are going to keep you from being sunburnt, but they also feed the adrenals. You need essential fats for the adrenals, so don't forget that. Head trauma, all these things. Moving to a new city or state, how would you know when you meet people, is this going to be okay or not? Sometimes you don't. Anemia, right? So if you have a patient who's anemic, low oxygen is stressful to the body. I hope you're not just running hemoglobin and hematocrit and red blood cells. You're running ferritin. Okay, we got to know their ferritin level and make sure that they need some iron. If they need it, they're going to get it. And what do we need to absorb iron? Vitamin C and stomach acid. Okay, low cholesterol is bad. It's bad. Urinary tract infections. I see most of the time this is low estrogen. And so it's normally happening in postmenopausal women. Mold, yeast, or fungus, which is just perpetuating everything and everybody's sugar addictions. They're dehydrated. Why? Because their electrolytes are out of whack. So you have to make sure they have enough minerals to replenish and actually dehydrate and rehydrate. Because sodium, for example, forces water into the cell. You have to have sodium in order to rehydrate. That's why people drink Gatorade and stuff. Poor dietary habits, they're over-exercising, they've just been on antidepressants forever, chronic pain, and they woke up in menopause. Not the best way to do it, but sometimes you can't help it. So this is why vitamin C is really, really important when you're stressed. Don't just take it when you're sick, but vitamin C is never going to be a problem unless you take like way too much and you run to the bathroom, you know, but sometimes that actually helps people when they need to go to the bathroom, right? So your body requires trace minerals. You don't need mega doses. That's why they're trace minerals. And when you're stressed, you're depleting the zinc and magnesium, but B vitamins are just controlling 99%, it seems like, of what happens in the body. So this is kind of cool about ginseng. Now, it's actually more suitable for men, I have found. It does increase cortisol, so good for your flatliners, but men seem to tolerate it. Now, it can also cause excess DHEA, which can therefore lead to excess testosterone, which leads to insulin resistance. You need to know that. And there's an increase in facial hair and acne. Women don't want that. They want hair on their head. They don't want it on their face, okay? And then men, no, they just gonna get, well, most guys would probably like that. Like, whoa, look at me at the gym, you know? And yeah, so sometimes ginseng is awesome, but I would say be aware of what it can actually be doing. Now, Siberia ginseng, which is the eleuthero, is really, really good for women and men. And I love this one because look at this. It normalizes your metabolism, regulates your neurotransmitters. Oh my gosh, we all need to regulate neurotransmitters and not have this fake push to make us happy. Just, you know what happiness is? Happiness is wanting what you have instead of having what you want. Let me say that again. Happiness is wanting what you have instead of having what you want. Okay? And sometimes when we're tempted, when we have low neurotransmitters, we're tempted to buy things we don't need. Then we get the bill, we don't like it. So this is why we have to step back and say, now, wait a minute, let me think about the consequences to this. Eleuthero is going to counteract mental fatigue. Well, who doesn't need that? I mean, let's get going, right? Let's take some of this stuff and get some stuff done. I feel better when I accomplish things. I like to accomplish things. I don't want to just, but sometimes I'll have a day, I don't care if I do one darn thing. And you need that too. You need that balance. Look at this, improve sleeping, diminish lethargy, lessen irritability. Yeah, that's why CBD oil is such a big deal, right? So when they're doing this excess cortisol from the adrenals, they're saying we're tired, we're tired, we're tired. But this can also increase free radicals. And ginkgo is excellent for that because it's actually an antioxidant. Also, you would do something like SOD, right? Superoxide dismutase, which is an antioxidant. Vitamin E, all your fat solubles are antioxidants, okay? But that's what's going to help too, because you have to take care of your adrenals. I think we ignore it. I think we just push it to the side. Oh, well, they'll just cope. But it also lessens tissue damage from inflammation and shock, helps people that are prone to depression. Ginkgo is amazing. It's amazing. If you're going to take a test, take some ginkgo on the way to taking the test. Works great. We know that ashwagandha works whether cortisol is too high or too low. Now, this is very interesting, and I did not know this for a long time, but ashwagandha is a nightshade. So if you have patients that have rheumatoid that are trying to avoid the nightshade family of foods, ashwagandha is a nightshade. So it won't work for everybody. So just so you know that, even though it's anti-inflammatory, sometimes people just are sensitive to nightshades and then they can be sensitive to ashwagandha. So I put that in here for you, okay? So that's what I like about this. If cortisol is too high, it lowers it. If it's too low, it raises it. Works very nice. Ginger root, we never think of ginger. I think some people like ginger beer, and that would probably be yummy. Ginger always has a sweet taste to it. But look at this, normalizes blood pressure and heart rate. That's amazing. Burns fat, increases energy and metabolic rate. Who doesn't want that, right? So that's why I ask about sleeping. It's such a big deal. And then also, if they're staying up too late, you want to be in bed before 10 p.m. to help your adrenals. I get excited if I'm in bed by 8:30. Now, I know that sounds weird, and it doesn't happen very often for me. I try to be in bed before 10. But sometimes if it's a rainy, kind of cool night, and I think, oh, I just get to snuggle in my bed and go to sleep. Oh, sometimes that's a treat because then you feel amazing the next day, okay? Watching something that's don't watch scary stuff right before bed. Don't let kids watch scary movies anyway. They got their whole life to be scared. They don't need to be scared when they're kids, okay? Being on Facebook, you know what? Whatever you find on Facebook, it absolutely can wait from then on. You don't have to know it right before you go to bed. Not having any white noise, having a fan to run is a wonderful way to have white noise. You can have apps on your phone. Just don't keep your phone close to your head, 4 feet away minimum, okay? Rain sounds or ocean sounds, exquisite. Don't have somebody sleeping in your bed with you that reads and leaves a light on and you're trying to sleep. You may have to just sleep separately. Sometimes that's the answer. And then pets can be scratching and stuff on the bed. You know, this is what I ask patients. But if someone if they're waking up between 2 and 5, it's usually liver, that should say dysfunction, not dysfunction. And so the liver is trying to processed stuff, and a lot of women, a hot flash will wake them up during this time. That's because their gallbladder isn't working, okay? So a high protein snack before bed helps people to sleep all night. And people say, well, I heard you shouldn't eat before you go to bed. Well, do you want to sleep all night? Then do it, because it makes a huge, huge difference. Each hour before midnight that you sleep is equal to 2 hours after midnight. Sleep in on your day off or your weekend if you can. Please don't just pack something into every minute of your day. No, that answer is no. You don't have to take a nap unless you're trying to get over a stressful event or you have jet lag or something, you're trying to get back to normal. But melatonin is also very good for the immune system, the hypothalamus. Really, really, really important for helping to regulate sleep. Okay, if you get sleepy after a meal, you've had too many carbs. If you're sleepy before, your blood sugar is too low. Okay, so this is why if the adrenals are not functioning, they can't fix the blood sugar. Or if you have high cortisol, which is increasing insulin output, the patient's sugar is dropping all the time. And they're saying, gosh, why do I have to eat so much? It's because of the high insulin from the high cortisol. So whether the adrenals are too high or too low functioning, you're going to have blood sugar issues. Okay? So let's get into the thyroid, not actually into your thyroid, unless you just want us to do that. This is what doctors aren't doing. They don't know how to test. They don't know what to do with it. And I had a patient that her TSH was 150. And I called her and I said, Catherine, are you tired? She said, well, a little. Stress alone will raise TSH. Okay, we don't have to keep adjusting the patient's stuff. We have to ask if they've been through a stress or what their stressors are, because that alone can raise TSH and it can elevate thyroid antibodies. That's such a huge deal. Everybody freaks out. Oh, my antibodies are elevated. Well, okay, what, to 30? I'm not that concerned, but we'll talk about that. Okay. I think 90% of my female patients, they just are just checking TSH, and that's not telling us enough. Okay. But thyroid hormone is on every cell in your body. I'm talking about hair cells, skin cells, heart cells, ovarian cells. Everything requires thyroid hormone in order to work. Okay. And everybody thinks that it's their thyroid. Well, it could be something else like the adrenals first, which is affecting the thyroid. Okay. So here's the thyroid, as we know. Here's the hypothalamus in the brain releasing the TRH and tells the pituitary, okay, here you go. And then the pituitary releases the TSH to tell the thyroid to make hormone. Now, this is such a big deal because we want to convert T4 into T3, and that happens in the liver. So on my whiteboard, I call T4 Canadian money and T3 is US money. Well, I can't spend Canadian money at Walmart. What do I have to do? If I have foreign money, what do? I go to the bank, and the patient, I always like to interact with them. Where would I go to change my money? And they just look at you. You're going to go to the bank. Well, the liver is the bank. And so the liver is responsible for 60% of the conversion of your thyroid gland. So here's your adrenals not working. Now your liver isn't working. Now your thyroid isn't working. Okay? And everybody wants to know what it is. That's why we start by helping those adrenals. So this is what the liver needs in order to convert T4 into T3, the usable form. This is my problem with Synthroid and levothyroxine. It's only T4. They never check to see if it's actually converting into T3. Well, we know about reverse T3, which happens with stress, which shuts down the conversion into normal T3 that runs your metabolism. This is why when you're under stress, you gain weight, okay? But this is what the liver needs to convert this. It needs B6. Now, what else does B6 do? Remember the methylation talk? B6 converts homocysteine into glutathione, and the thyroid needs it too. I see B6 and zinc deficiencies going together on labs more than almost anything else. Selenium. Well, this is why mercury shuts down the thyroid, because it depletes selenium, and glutathione requires 4 atoms of selenium to work. Vitamin D. If I have a Hashimoto's patient, these are the 3 questions I'm asking them. Here we go. Number 1, what is your vitamin D level? Most of them don't know, do they? Number 2, have they been tested for H. pylori, the most common infection in the world? Number 3, are they off gluten? That's what I want to know with a Hashi patient. Now look at this, a B12 also. Well, what do we know from this? We know that B6 and B12 are required for full methylation, all the way down into glutathione production. And if they're iron deficient, the thyroid can't make hormones. So your anemic patients, let's talk about this a second. Hemoglobin recycles into bilirubin, okay? Bilirubin, we know, is stored in the liver, and then it turns into bile, stored in the gallbladder to absorb vitamin D. So if you have a patient that has low levels of iron, then the hemoglobin is low, then they can't convert it into bilirubin, then they can't make bile, and they can't absorb vitamin D, and the TSH goes up. What if they're taking an antacid? Same thing. They can't absorb the iron without acid. Now the iron doesn't work, nothing is working, and they're exhausted. B12 and iron deficiencies are just exhaustion written all over them, okay? So this can be the whole reason why your patient's vitamin D is low and their thyroid hormone is up. The TSH is too high. And I never have anybody come in and tell me that their endocrinologist told them this. I don't know why. It's pretty important, okay? So this is just a slide to be in your stuff so that you can see this. There's the 60% of T4s converted to T3 in the liver. All the stuff, and then especially active T3, the bacteria in the GI tract is important. And then there's reverse T3, all this stuff, and then you can see that. Now, they're named T4 and T3 because of the number of iodine molecules attached to them. So what if this was the opposite? What if you had 93% T3? Well, you'd burn up your body within a matter of minutes. Gone. Okay, that's not the way it's intended to be. But look at the things that the thyroid needs to make hormone. It needs some iodine, and it needs zinc and iron, a lot of other stuff, but also hydrogen peroxide. Please do not drink that. Thyroid peroxidase and thyroglobulin. That's why we check antibodies against those last 2. Okay, so here's the patient. They come in, they're freezing, they're constipated, their hair is falling out, the outer portion of their eyebrows are gone, all this stuff. Oh yeah, my doctor said it's normal. Well, that's not everything. That's actually not even coming out of the thyroid, is it? It's coming out of the pituitary. So this is the way that I like to see it. I want TSH at that level. I want to see total T4. Okay, I'm going to talk about this for a second, and this is dealing with blood sugar. Now, a lot of your patients will come in that they have had TSH run and free T4, maybe. But if it's there, you look at it, okay? But that doesn't tell me anything. I want to see total T4. Now, why do I want to see total? Because hormones are either bound or free, right? So total compared to free will tell me if most of the hormone is being bound. So if you have normal total T4, like a 9, 8 or 9, and you have low free T4, what does that mean? The free fraction is what you actually utilize, okay? So if you have normal total T4 and low free T4, this means that your T4 is being bound. What's it bound to? Sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG. And it's a protein. It's bound to a protein. If it's bound to a protein, you have less free form, can't use it. Same thing for testosterone or anything else. You have a total and a free form. Now, what affects that? Insulin resistance. So if a person has normal total testosterone and low free testosterone, or normal total T4, low free T4, it's usually too much sex hormone binding globulin, which comes from insulin resistance, which comes from what? High cortisol. There you go. T3 uptake is a percentage. Reverse T3 goes up with stress. And then, of course, the thyroid antibodies. Don't get freaked out about high thyroid antibodies. I've never met anyone that said my thyroid completely disappeared because my antibodies were elevated. And I have completely reversed antibodies being elevated by using vitamin D. I haven't published an article about this. It's all in the medical literature. Low vitamin D and autoimmune disease. So if T4 is normal, the problem is not the thyroid. Okay. If T4 is too low, then iodine is usually indicated. Some people are weird about giving iodine to people with elevated antibodies. I say do whatever appeals to you the most. I have not seen that it hurts it that much, especially a low dose of iodine where I can do super high doses of iodine. But what if the T3 uptake is low? So remember, you have T4 over here that's inactive and it has to convert into T3, which is active. Okay. So T4 is normal, saying we're doing our thing. Okay. The liver isn't converting the T4 into the T3. That's a nutrient problem. Okay. So we looked at those nutrients, the zinc, the B6, the B12, the selenium, all these things are required for conversion. So this is why a person thinks it's my thyroid, but I don't know why the patients are put on Synthroid and levothyroxine and we don't check T3 to see if it's converting. We just keep loading it, and thinking, well, what happened to it? Now the person is hyperthyroid. Okay. So if the T3 uptake is low, the body needs nutrients to perform those functions. And remember, when you're stressed, you're going to deplete zinc and magnesium. Okay. Or the adrenals are just going crazy, and then the reverse T3 is too high, and that's shutting down the T3. Now, if you have low T4 and low T3, a glandular works beautifully for that. This is why some people do better on Armour Thyroid or Naturopathy. They do better on that. But you don't want to do a glandular if T4 is normal, because a glandular supports T4 and T3. Are you falling asleep yet? Okay, hope you're not. Now, stress shuts down the thyroid, and people will say, I'm eating an apple, I'm drinking a glass of water for lunch, I'm exercising, why can't I lose weight? Because your brain hasn't got the signal yet that everything's cool on the home front. They're not there yet. Give it some time. Give it time. So if somebody has been with adrenal problems for 5 years, it's usually a month for every year that the patient has had a problem. You can't rush adrenals. Most of the time it's a year, maybe 2. It's not something you just go, oh, okay, just give me an ashwagandha IV drip and I'm good. No. You have to find out what was causing the problem, correct it if you can, get some counseling, get some rest, whatever you have to do. Okay? Now, if a patient has TSH that's too high and antibodies are elevated, then they have Hashimoto's. But if they just have elevated antibodies and TSH is normal, something is driving those antibodies up. Okay? So infection drives inflammation, which drives autoimmune disease. I've seen this over and over and over. Okay? So if the vitamin D is low, we know vitamin D is anti-inflammatory, isn't it? Okay? Also, the thyroid needs vitamin A, needs the fat solubles. But if a patient has H. pylori, this is one of the #1 causes of the elevated antibodies, which I mentioned earlier. Are patients being checked for that? No. And what is the endocrinologist telling them about their Hashis? Well, have a nice day. They don't know what to do. They just keep them on their Synthroid or whatever. They don't know what to do. This is where we come in. This is where we come in, make a difference. So here's the symptoms of hypothyroidism. Now, I was going to mention here that when you have H. pylori, there's different ways to test it. I normally do it in a blood draw, but you can also do a breath test. Okay, there's ways to do that. Now, here's the symptoms of hypothyroidism. Now, this is interesting how some of these sound like adrenals, don't they? Fatigue, sluggishness, they're cold. Now, a lot of your patients are going to be anemic, your female patients especially. Anemia symptoms and thyroid symptoms are almost identical, and just that they cause a lot of the same things. Here's the difference. If your patient goes up a flight of stairs and they're out of breath, that's anemia. The thyroid isn't going to do that. Okay? So you can have low thyroid, low blood sugar, and anemia all at the same time. I've had several patients that did that. Where do you start? You have to fix the anemia first. Otherwise, there's not enough blood flow in order to get nutrients to the organs, and they don't function well. Okay? So if you have low blood sugar and anemia and low thyroid, you just can't even function. Constipation, why would constipation be a side effect of low thyroid function? It's because the body goes, I can't move anything right now. Everything's just kind of on the down low. So when you have hyperthyroidism, the person is going to have diarrhea, and they're also going to have low cholesterol. It's so weird how those symptoms just reverse. So low cholesterol, diarrhea, they're going to be hot, they're going to have anxiety, and they're going to have insomnia, all that kind of stuff with hyperthyroidism. Okay. Now, sometimes the thyroid goes hyperactive to kick the liver into action. So the liver is not doing its thing. It's just not detoxifying. And so the thyroid goes, hey, we're going to ramp this up. And it goes, in order to get the liver to do something. I've seen that happen more times than I can count. Pale, dry skin. Well, that can be anemia too, isn't it? Puffy face, usually low thyroid. All those that can also be low protein in the diet. A hoarse voice, okay? And elevated cholesterol. It's just trying to get things to work. Also, unexplained weight gain. Doesn't everybody want unexplained weight loss? Like, oh, I just woke up and shed 20 pounds. Muscle aches, tenderness, stiffness, pain, stiffness, swelling in your joints. So how vitamin D affects this, okay? Muscle weakness, heavy menstrual periods. That's because there's no iron. The thyroid can't make hormone. Brittle fingernails and hair. I'm telling you, chlorine is the culprit most of the time. And then they're depressed. Well, of course they're depressed. Everything hurts, and they gain weight, and nothing they do works. Of course that leads to depression. Look at all these things that can affect your thyroid. Lyme's disease, rickettsia, which is Lyme's co-infection. There's also Bartonella and Ehrlichia that are co-infections of Lyme's. Epstein-Barr, gut problems. There's the adrenals, blood sugar imbalances, liver isn't detoxifying, essential fatty acids. All of your patients are low in minerals and essential fats. All of them, all of them, all of them. Heavy metal toxicity, chlorine, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, gluten issues, insulin resistance from high cortisol, autoimmune disease, excess estrogen, GI infections, mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, let me bring up this point about any of your patients who are infertile. Vitamin A works amazing for infertility, okay? But this is what's happening sometimes when they have that they're not making any eggs, an anovulatory cycle, okay? The thyroid tells the ovaries what to do. So if the adrenals aren't working, the thyroid isn't working, and the ovaries aren't working. So you're going to have weird periods, you can have PCOS, you can have all kinds of stuff, right? Because the main thing to help with PCOS is what? It's fixing the blood sugar. But all these things, because the thyroid isn't working, is because the adrenals aren't working. So if a woman is stressed and her adrenals are not functioning, why would the thyroid tell the ovaries to make hormones to get her pregnant? It's not going to do that, is it? The body goes, are you kidding us? We're hanging on by a thread. The last thing we need is a baby in the mix. We don't need that now. So this is why women miscarry, and this is why they can't conceive to begin with. It's because a thyroid problem is there. So if you have a woman that says, I can't conceive, who is checking their thyroid? You are, okay? Because that's one of the #1 reasons for infertility is the thyroid is not functioning. So you have to be sure that that's working. And then to make sure that's working, then you know the adrenals are working, okay? Excess estrogen will shut down the thyroid. This is what's in birth control pills, as we know, okay? Shut that thing down. So estrogen dominance, thyroid isn't going to work. And why is that? The estrogen lowers the progesterone. Progesterone is progestation. The body is smarter than we think it is. Do you ever just get over what the body is capable of? I hope you never get over that. It's amazing. It's like, how did it know to do that? Just the intelligence that was behind it is just amazing. Now, we know the thyroid is about 1 ounce, not very big, and it produces the thyroid hormone and calcitonin. Now, why do we care about calcitonin? This is causing your calcium to go where it needs to go. So if your patient has like chronic kidney stones, you better be doing a parathyroid test. You better be running a PTH blood marker. You need to see if it's the parathyroid. Okay, that's the #1 reason for kidney stones. That's also a reason for osteoporosis, is taking calcium out of the bones and putting it where it doesn't belong, right? Like calcification in the arteries, calcification around the heart, calcification in the joints, in arthritic conditions. Okay, it's a big, big deal. Nobody pays attention to the parathyroid, and we need to, because sometimes if it's just removed, everything goes back to normal. Okay, this is what could be the missing piece in your puzzle for some of your osteoporosis patients or your kidney stone patients. Who wants to have a kidney stone? Nobody I know. Okay, so we know about the TSH, and it's made in the pituitary gland, but look at all these other things: iodine, magnesium, zinc, copper, vitamin B2, B3, B6, B vitamins. Okay, so this is why the patient is stressed and things go south. So a friend of mine that lost her husband to kidney cancer when he was in his 40s, 2 months later, she gained 20 pounds. The doctor puts her on a 1,000-calorie-a-day diet. Oh, don't even get me started. I said, you just lost your husband. Oh, let's not be that person, okay? So this is what I was saying before about the iodine molecules attached to them, but T3 is what you want. That's what actually starts working. So you can say, how come I'm on levothyroxine or Synthroid? It's not helping me, because it's not converting. It's not converting over into what it needs to, okay? Cortisol suppresses TSH. Now, here's the pituitary saying, let's make some TSH and tell the thyroid to work. Cortisol comes in and says, forget it. Forget it. We're not going to work. Immune activation, right? It's immune system. Something has happened. An infection, which remember is going to raise cortisol to help you heal. High adrenaline, too many free radicals, getting older, fasting, stress, diabetes. All these things can drive the inactivation of T3 to reverse T3. You know, is there anything diabetes doesn't affect? No, it's the only disease that is toxic to every single system in the body, okay? So elevated insulin levels due to a diet high in refined carbs will increase reverse T3. And this is why diabetics, one reason that they get overweight, especially if they put them on an insulin pump. Forget it. You're not going to be 98 pounds anymore. That's what happens to type 1 diabetics. Their blood sugar spikes to 600-700. They can't make insulin anymore. They put them on insulin and they just pop right back out. Okay? That's what stress does. So that's why stress increases reverse T3, because of the insulin. So remember that the patient has high cortisol, the body's in fight or flight. The blood sugar is increased to the muscles to get you away from the situation. All that sugar has to have insulin to bring it back to normal. And all that insulin causes insulin resistance. That's why high stress causes diabetes. Okay? Nobody has a metformin deficiency. Get to the root cause and find out what the stress is. Toxic metals, mercury, cadmium, and lead will also increase reverse T3. Now we know we want it to control the metabolism, but also the energy production inside the cell. Now look what it needs to work: fat, sugar, and protein, not candy bars. Of course, packed with peanuts, you know, Snickers really satisfies. All right, thyroid hormone controls the function of the mitochondria. Well, what do you know, right? So L-carnitine, acetyl L-carnitine, we know really helps to heal mitochondria. damaged mitochondria. But the thyroid hormone controls the function of the mitochondria. So L-carnitine is great, but what about the thyroid? Okay, let's not forget that. Here's the other things. It also affects your stomach. I've had so many women that when I fixed their thyroid, their stomach just fixed beautifully. Beautifully. It's affecting that stomach. Hair falling out, slow wound healing, all this stuff. So we know they're just looking at TSH and thyroid levels drop, then it increases, then the thyroid hormone increases, then the TSH goes down. Sometimes you will see low TSH and low T4. Now we remember TSH and T4 are like the wings on an airplane. TSH goes up, the other wing goes down, that's T4. Then they put you on Synthroid to level the airplane. But sometimes you're going to have low TSH and low T4 at the same time. What does that mean? Protein. They need protein. What if you have high TSH and high T4? Okay, this is why they must be running T4. If you just check TSH and it's high, how do you know T4 isn't high too? And then you put them on Synthroid and that's more T4. It's not the answer. This can mean that they need protein breakdown. So low TSH and low T4 means I need protein. High TSH and high T4 together mean I can't break down all this protein. So what do I need? Protease enzymes. Protease enzymes, okay? Cortisol produced during stress by the adrenal gland can inhibit TSH and throwing off the accuracy of the test. Oh boy, they never talk about that. When you have sleep deprivation, the plasma concentrations of T4 and T3 decline, but TSH remains normal. Now, why is that? Again, that's when the thyroid is not going to tell the ovaries to make hormones for a person to conceive. Not the time to do it because the person isn't even sleeping. And we know with a new baby, are you sleeping? Some people tell me their 3- and 4-year-olds aren't sleeping all night. What's up with that? One woman said, every night my 3-year-old comes in. And I finally said, what are you feeding him before bed? Honey toast. Honey toast? Well, he's probably conking out from the insulin and then boom, he's waking up. And here he comes in to wake up mom and dad. These are why you need to ask other questions, okay? So many people are having insomnia and sleep. I don't want them taking iodine late in the day. This can be stimulative and keep them from sleeping. But remember, the adrenals with sleep, that's what's up right there, okay? So this, as people get older, they can't convert thyroid hormone, also can be lower vitamins and minerals, also leaky gut. They've lived a long time of stress. Maybe their thyroids are just pooped out, okay? Soy products have been shown to inhibit hormone conversion. Now, not miso and tempeh, which they say are not a problem. Vitamin C is going to help this. But look at all these things also. Radiation and chemo, shutting the thyroid hormone conversion down. Growth hormone deficiency, you're making a lot of growth hormone till you turn about 30, okay? Here's some root causes of Hashimoto's. All these things we've been talking about, okay? So Epstein-Barr, H. pylori, all these things are going to happen. Hepamax, okay? Proper levels of liver enzymes. It's got cordyceps. That is also amazing for adrenals. When you have low cortisol, cordyceps, wonderful. Reishi almost acts like an adaptogen, okay? And acetylcysteine, which is going to help you to make glutathione so you can detox, okay? There's vitamin D. You better be checking vitamin D. I don't know why people don't do it. If people have a genetic SNP in the VDR SNP, it's a vitamin D receptor. That means they need more than other people. But they've also seen that without sunlight, we know you can't make cholesterol. You can't process cholesterol normally. And everybody's sitting inside of this ridiculous artificial light. We need to have outdoor offices. Wouldn't that be fun? Elevated cortisol can cause a vitamin D deficiency. Anything that's inflammatory is going to cause thyroid antibodies to elevate. An infection, a food issue, all this stuff. Vitamin D, when it goes down, I'm telling you, the antibodies go up. I've just seen it and seen it and seen it. Insulin resistance, remember, can come from high cortisol, can lead to PCOS and lead to autoimmune thyroid. Okay. And I also am going to see on the Dutch test increased androgens. Okay. Elevated testosterone and insulin have been shown to result in autoimmune thyroid. Have you ever been told that? I think that's amazing. Has a Hashi patient ever been checked for PCOS and had their blood sugar checked and their fasting insulin checked? Probably not. These are pearls for you guys, man. Let's get on it. Let's just stand out from the pack and let's get her done, right? And just say, oh, maybe that's why PCOS is helped by helping the blood sugar. But remember, the adrenals are controlling the blood sugar too. So wouldn't it make sense to help adrenals in PCOS? Absolutely. So glad you said that. Here's some signs and symptoms of this. How many of your female patients have this junk? Most of them. Look at the fatigue, the woman with her head on the desk. Okay. This is most of your patients. And of course, we know that celiac is going to have a lot more thyroid autoimmune disease than other people. And wheat and dairy block iron absorption. If you have an anemic patient and you put them on iron, tell them to take it away from gluten or dairy. Look at all these things. Inflammation can be reduced by zinc, curcumin, fish oil, and alpha lipoic acid, L-carnitine, L-methionine. Now we're dealing with methylation, aren't we? Choline, methylation, inositol, methylation. Phosphatidylcholine from lecithin is wonderful. Okay, can help with liver, alcoholic cirrhosis. You know, major drinking doesn't ever end well. Okay. And then there's free fatty acid production from the excess sugar, and this does not end well. Okay, leaky gut, constant flow of toxins passing through the gut barrier, and the poor liver is saying, I can't do anything anymore. I'm tired. Everybody's tired. Adrenals are tired, thyroid's tired, everybody's tired. Elevated insulin levels will reduce glutathione, inhibiting the liver's ability to detoxify. This is why when the adrenals are stressed out, the liver says, forget it, I can't do it. Then it affects the conversion of the inactive T4 to T3. Then it increases the pro-oxidants. We need more antioxidants. Then it leads to excess estrogen. No. Okay. But for the insulin resistance, the sugar cannot get into the cell to run energy. It can't. And now the thyroid has to have more high hormone output. It's just a bad, vicious cycle. And when the adrenals have reached a state of fatigue, they're not making enough cortisol or DHEA. And so this is why people are like, oh, I'm just going to treat the thyroid. I'm just going to treat the liver. No, you have to start with the adrenals. And if you do adrenals and thyroid together, it's a nice 1-2 punch to help people to get better. Okay. But once the adrenal glands are healthy and the other factors associated with thyroid imbalance are optimized, there's no need to support the thyroid directly. Did you get that part? Because it's cool. Sometimes you don't even have to touch the thyroid. I had a patient that had severe liver issues. I mean, no symptoms. Thyroid enzymes were, and liver enzymes were over 150, okay, each. And put her on a detox, totally straighten out the liver. And in 6 months, she said, I don't need my thyroid medication anymore. Everything affects everything, doesn't it? Iodine is very important, but high levels of cortisol will increase the excretion of iodide from the kidney. We don't want that. So stress lowers thyroid function, okay? Now, progesterone enhances thyroid hormone function, but a low thyroid can result in inadequate progesterone production. This goes back to the infertility issue and problems with women's periods, okay? I don't like to put people on testosterone replacement. I want to know what's going on upstream. And this is all about the Dutch Complete and the cycle mapping, which we already know about. There's a picture of that. Stress can actually free inactive estrogen to active, leading to side effects like water retention, breast cysts, moodiness, and weight gain. Conventional meat from animals injected with estrogen is a problem. That's the biggest problem I see with excess estrogen. And pesticides are full of xenoestrogens. They're also going to have low thyroid function with the birth control pill, and clearing the body of excess estrogen can clear the symptoms of hypothyroidism. That is huge. And there's your DIM, diindolylmethane, okay? Diindolylmethane. Let's say that 3 times fast, okay? This works really, really nicely, really nicely. This is about mercury detox. It'll be in your notes. And what mercury can do, it's such a big deal. And mercury inhibits the conversion of cholesterol into pregnenolone. Wow. I'm telling you, that book about reversing chronic disease by Tom Warren is a game changer. Look at these symptoms of toxicity. Neurotoxicity, nerve pain, spontaneous abortion, excess saliva. I mean, come on, are we doing hairs testing? There you go. That's what you need to be doing. Quicksilver Scientific also tests for this. I had a patient that we suspected mercury. It was normal, but his lead was off the chart. Okay? Yeah. It's not whether you have metals, it's how much. You can never detoxify somebody completely. And also, thyroid hormones are influencing zinc, but you need the trace minerals besides the macro minerals. So thyroid hormones are essential for the absorption of zinc. If you don't have enough zinc, you can't mature your white blood cells in the thymus gland. And there goes your immune system. That's why zinc helps the immune system. Okay? Hair loss because of low thyroid may not improve unless you add zinc to that. And here's the zinc. There you go. And it does. It helps B6 and everything else. So what does taurine do? Taurine does amazing things. Lowers fluoride concentrations in the body, which is affecting the thyroid, and helps with supraventricular tachycardia and all this kind of stuff. So when you have adrenal dysfunction and thyroid dysfunction, you need to put the adrenals first. Now, here's how we're going to end our little talk for tonight. Now, this is the Harvard Medical Stress Test. I'm going to show you a photo of 2 identical dolphins jumping out of the water. Quickly observe them. Make a mental note, because people under stress can see the differences. So the more differences you see, the more stressed you are. Okay, so everybody take a deep breath. We're going to look at the dolphins. Okay, here we go. Are there any differences between those 2 dolphins? I love that. And look, the cow is ahead. He's faster than the dolphin. I love that. Okay. Now we're ready for any questions, or they can be emailed, or whatever you would like to do. Joanne, Chris, I'm done.
Dr. Jean Lawrence, that was amazing. Well over an hour of content. Huge. Thank you so much for that. I want to just, the questions, if I open that up to questions, a lot of them were just like, I want the presentation, I want slide content, all of that. I'm just trying to see if there's anything particular, because I think you covered a lot of things in that, and most of it is just your amazing presentation. So I think, just for the sake of time and just ending all this, let's just move on. Dr. Sedano, do you have any comments on this? And then we'll just go through the rest of this, and as far as ordering.
Yeah, just quickly, and I'm going to ask this to Dr. Lawrence. I do like to order vitamin D, the 25-hydroxy, but also the 125-dihydroxy. So do you do that as well? What's your take on that?
Yes, I actually do both of those. And I like the one that has the T3 and the D2 and D3 broken down.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are actually taking D2, which I have found is not absorbed very well. D3 is much more important.
Yeah, because I like to look at the active form, and that's the 125-dihydroxy. It's particularly upregulated, certainly with autoimmune diseases. So I know you had mentioned a lot with that, but great presentation, Doc. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Dr. Lawrence, do you want to just go to the next slide? We have a couple other things at the end.
Okay. Okay. So,
Again, I just want to, we have possibly newer practitioners online as well as our existing clients. Free, ask the doctor on the left-hand side, email consultation, any help with lab interpretation, question on clinical conditions, all of that is there right from your portal. Just a great resource for our newer practitioners and anybody that just needs any guidance. Next slide, Dr. Lawrence. And then just a couple things, how to actually order anything for Dutch testing. You're going to log into your Avexia account. From the left-hand side, you're going to go to add new lab order. You're going to register a patient or a client in the directory, and then from there, how to order that test. You will click on specialty labs and then go to continue. Dr. Lawrence, next slide, thank you. And then really just add it to the shopping cart and be able to check out all the ways that you can reach out to Avexia Diagnostics. We are here Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Info at avexiadiagnostics.com. Live chat on your account, or you can always call us at 888-852 2723 with anything we can help you with getting your practice started or any questions in regard to this. It's been amazing, Dr. Lawrence, having you on board. So I think I'm just going to close out this at the very end. Thank you so much, Dr. Lawrence and Dr. Sedano, for your input for this informative presentation. A recording of this webinar will be available by email in the next few days for everybody that is registered here. Thank you again for joining us for this webinar event. Until next time, from everyone at Avexia Diagnostics, stay healthy, stay safe, and we wish you all the best on your pathway to wellness. Thank you so much. Good evening, and thank you again. Bye-bye.